Hi, I'm Leslie Maddox, and today I'm sharing with you a review of Bob Books Workbooks, along with my recommendations and tips for using them. Each of these workbooks covers different box sets, and you can look at the back and see which box sets these workbooks cover. This one is my first Bob Books, the alphabet, beginning reader set 1, and then rhyming words. If we go to the table of contents, you'll see basically a table of contents for each of these box sets, and for each book in the box set, each reader in the box set, and what pages you can find activities that go along with that reader, which seems really helpful. The activities themselves consist of a lot of coloring on most pages, I would say. A lot of word activities, since this is the focus. So for this portion covering the alphabet, there's tracing the uppercase and lowercase letters and words that begin with those sounds. And then if you move on to the beginning readers books, you have more tracing, more coloring. There are some matching activities, completing words, a little bit of, I wouldn't say story writing, but you fill in letters to complete the story, a lot of those. If you continue on, you'll see a lot of, in this, the third Bob book set that's covered in here, a lot of word searches. More, now here we get into word writing, more coloring, identifying words that, like in this case, look at the pictures below and color the objects that rhyme with sled. So a lot of coloring, a lot of similar activities that go over different books in the set. And so while at first glance these seem like really good activities for a preschooler that's learning to read, I developed a different opinion once my son started actually using this book. Since I'd already taught 2 other children how to read and write, I felt that the handwriting aspect, the tracing both uppercase and lowercase letters and then writing them on their own, that moved just way too quickly. Like I said, this is a pre-K book, and I'm using it with my preschooler. He just turned 5 and he's about to move on to kindergarten. And we have been spending the past year learning how to write uppercase letters, all of his uppercase letters. And then for the kindergarten year, the handwriting curriculum we're using, he'll be learning how to form all of his lowercase letters. But this book, from the start, has them going over uppercase and lowercase letters, tracing them and then just writing them out, and then quickly moving on to forming words. I felt that this assumed that reading and writing are learned in lockstep with each other, which I haven't found to be the case. So I felt like this was getting in the way of the handwriting curriculum that we're using. And I'm very picky about my kids when they're learning how to write, when they're first learning manuscript, and then when they're learning cursive, that I sit and watch them. I feel like that's necessary with teaching handwriting, that I sit and watch how they form letters so that they don't pick up bad habits, because it's very easy to create a bad habit. It's very difficult to break a bad habit. So I ended up just skipping these, and really the most useful activities I found were the actual reading activities, like the word searches. I feel like those really helped him, and we really enjoyed those. But I wouldn't have bought this entire jumbo workbook just for an activity like this. If we look at the kindergarten book, we'll see some similar activities. Again, you have your word searches, you have more writing words and like finding the middle sound of the word, more coloring. Here we move into forming sentences. We have here identifying sight words. So this is the box set for sight words for kindergarten. I feel like this would be a helpful activity. Identifying sight words, I would use that with a kindergartner, and I would use that with my preschooler now. And more sentence writing. As the difficulty level increases, the difficulty level of the books increases, the difficulty level of the activities increase. I do feel that the writing activities may be a bit too advanced for students operating at the reading level of the readers that they go with, but some kids might be okay with that. Considering the weaknesses of these workbooks, the inconsistent difficulty level and the mismatch between reading level and writing level, I've chosen to use them simply as a source of worksheets. I choose the activities I like, and for the most part, the activities I like are these word searches. As far as teacher prep goes, as long as you have crayons and pencils, these workbooks should be open and go for the parent. And for student time, it just depends on your student. If your student really loves workbooks, and mine does, I mean, he would be happy to just work through this, indefinitely. But I limit it some because there are so many of the pages in here that I don't want him to do, because I don't want him to develop those bad habits and kind of create more work for both of us later on, that I don't let him to just work all the way through. If he were older, let's say it were a year from now, I would just give him this book, and I might, hang on to it for next summer, because after next year, he'll have learned how to form his uppercase letters. So I can just hand this to him and say, hey, work through this. And if you want, we can even pull out those readers, and you can read them by yourself again. So that might be how I end up using them. So who would I recommend these Bob Books workbooks to? Normally, I would say that workbooks like these are good for students that do well with interactive and visual learning methods, since it is a workbook and you are having to do a lot of activities, interactive activities, and there's a lot of coloring and cute pictures, so that's good for a visual learner. But since I feel that these workbooks are inconsistent in matching activities to reading and handwriting level, I actually have a hard time recommending them at all, other than as a review. Because of the handwriting aspect and knowing how to form both uppercase and lowercase letters, I feel that this book, even though it says it's a pre-K book, that it might serve better as a review for kindergartners or first graders that have already learned how to form all their letters, both uppercase and lowercase. And so this might be like a good summer workbook to use in after kindergarten or first grade, where you can just kind of hand to them and let them work their way through it. Because of that means that they wouldn't be, by the time they use this workbook, they'll be past the reading level of these readers. So if you want to use this workbook along with the readers as you're using the readers, I don't know. For me, that doesn't work well at all. Instead, it might be fun for a child who did in the past, a year ago, use these particular readers, like these particular box sets, and remember them, and have some fond memories of them. And then, hey, guess what? We get to relive the joy. Here's a workbook based on those readers, except now you get to focus more on handwriting and forming words. So it might be better to look at it that way. I would not recommend these books to students that resist learning one-on-one, since the disconnect between reading level and handwriting ability will require a lot of parent help. So if I were going to have him do this page, for example, I'd have to sit and talk through all that with him, because he's, first of all, the letter is, look at this here, even the font. In the example, the M is formed a little bit differently than with the dashed lines that they show. These are slanted and these are straight up and down. Even just, I would also not recommend these workbooks to parents that really want to use most of the pages in a workbook to feel like they're getting their money's worth. Not if you're using them for the grade levels that they're saying on the cover. So, for example, this book was $12.99 US. I think I got it at Target, so I may have paid a little less than that. And there's a lot of pages. You'll think, well, that's pretty good for $13, but I'm actually not using many of the pages right now. Like I said, most of them I'm using are in the back, the word searches, some of the matching pages, some of the coloring pages, and that's it. I could pay a lot less than that on Teachers Pay Teachers for something that was more grade level appropriate, and probably get a lot more worksheets than the ones I'm using in here. My best tips for using these workbooks are to use them simply as a worksheet repository like I'm doing. Identify the worksheets that you like. If you are looking for worksheets to practice letter formation, then use those. Even if your student is in kindergarten and you're practicing uppercase letters or lowercase letters, then hang on to this portion of the book and pull these worksheets out or open up to these pages when they're covering that letter. So identify the pages that you actually want to use now and then just use those pages. I also highly recommend working with your students one-on-one when it comes to the writing activities. Otherwise, students might invent ways to form letters on their own. So for example, since my student has so far just learned how to form his uppercase letters and not the lowercase letters, he might come to this page, see this lowercase m, and invent some way to form it without my knowing, and use that invented way all through here. And it could be very incorrect. He might not even notice that there's a line here, and then just do kind of a McDonald's M, and then that would be troublesome for the next school year when we're doing lowercase letters, especially if you have a child who likes to be right and doesn't take direction very well. Then what should have been a simple, here's how you form this letter, turns into, but I do it this way. Take it from someone who knows. So I would be very careful about trying to use this book as independent work, and instead highly recommend working with your student for the writing activities. And my last tip would be to use the Bob Books printables from This Reading Mama if you have a student who requires more interactive learning methods, and you might find more age-appropriate activities in those. If you're interested in more reviews like this one, where I give you my tips and recommendations for how to incorporate different books, workbooks, curricula into your homeschool, please tap on the playlist to the side. That's where I keep all those videos. And I will talk to you in the next video. Bye-bye.